Hello, and welcome to episode 30 of A Week in Watches. I'm your host, Zach Weiss, co-founder of Worn & Wound. Thanks for joining me. Normally, A Week in Watches is a look back at the past week, but this time we're doing something different. It's the end of 2022, so we're looking all the way back. Yes, this is A Year in Watches 2022, and there's a lot to cover. Too much, in fact. As such, this is actually going to be a two-parter. This episode focuses on the major group brands that we often cover at Worn & Wound. The next episode will focus more on highlights from micro and independent brands, but frankly I have a few large brands too because I couldn't fit them all in here. There's no big sponsor this week, so please head to windupwatchshop.com and find yourself a little treat. You deserve it. All right, let's get into it. A year in review. 2022 was a very long year. Remembering back, so much happened, and I'm just talking about watches, naturally. A Week in Watches didn't exist yet. We were in a different office altogether. We still had the same bookshelf, though. Moonswatch was a word we could have never imagined. This leads me to the first big release of 2022, the Speedmaster Caliber 321 chronograph 38.6 millimeters. Not the most elaborately named watch. This was unveiled in January of 22, just a couple weeks after the new year, which means we might actually be in store for something in early 2023. I have no idea, because Omega also launched the 1861 Speedies in very early 2021. So we'll see if this is a tradition or not. Despite the non-descriptive name, this was one of the most luxe Speedies ever made, and yet one of the most understated too. From a distance, it might not look like anything special at all, but in fact, the spiritual recreation of the CK2915-1 from 1957 was made from solid Canopus white gold. Ooh. But it also featured a black onyx dial. So what is normally, printed metal here was 100% stone, which is really cool. More importantly, inside was Omega's Caliber 321. Reintroduced in 2019, the 321s are small batch-made movements meant for higher-end level of Speedmaster. These are based on the original Speedmaster column caliber that was used up through around 1968. Visible from the backside, from the front, there is no sign of this special feature. Coming in at $81,000, the Speedmaster Caliber 321 chronograph 38.6 millimeter set the stage for a year of big releases. And I'll get back to Omega later. Grand Seiko had a truly epic year. They kicked it off with a quite surprising launch, the SLGA 009, which was another interpretation of the white birch, which had only recently been launched. This time, however, it featured their 5-day spring drive movement and a different, more subtle interpretation of the bark texture. So there's essentially two white birches. Staying with the birch theme, they launched the SLGH 017 Night Birch with a black dial and titanium case. Yes, this is my favorite of them. As well as the SLGH 011 Green Birch with a jade tone. Lots and lots of birches. That was hardly the beginning, however. We got reminded time and time again it was the 55th anniversary of the 44 GS case. There were many models released, including the first use of the 9S A5 caliber in a 44 GS with the SLGH 009, as well as the 5-day spring drive 9RA2 in the SLGA 013. Also, the manual wound 9R31 spring drive, my personal favorite GS movement found in the SBGY 009. They also launched the 36.5mm 44 GS cases with the SBG 289, and they followed that up with the 293, which I am actually recently reviewed. Spoiler, it's pretty nice. Think we're done? You're wrong. At Watches and Wonders, Grand Seiko launched the Evolution 9 Sports models. These are 3 high-intensity titanium models featuring spring drive GMTs, spring drive chronographs, and a 5-day spring drive diver, setting a new standard for the brand's modern sports watches. But perhaps the most significant, if least obtainable, was the Kodo Constant Force Tourbillon, setting a new standard for technical high-end watchmaking for the brand. It was a visually spectacular watch, combined Grand Seiko's first tourbillon and constant force escapement on a single axis. Based on the Concept T0 movement from 2020, it was really spectacular work and went on to win the GHPG award in chronometry. This is clearly a tentpole year for Grand Seiko, and we can't wait to see how or if they'll top it next year. Tudor got back to form. After a couple of quiet years, semi-quiet years I should say, during the peak pandemic, Tudor came back swinging. Literally our first stop at Watches and Wonders last year, they launched the lovely, if semi-controversial, Black Bay Pro. Controversial because watch enthusiasts suddenly became experts on proportions without seeing this thing in person, whatever. It's a 39mm true GMT. It scratched a combined 1655 and Black Bay 58 shaped itch. But just a few months later, Tudor launched the 39mm Ranger. I had the opportunity to attend that launch in London, and it was very exciting to say the least. The second reintroduction of the Ranger, this time they brought the size down to a more tolerable 39mm from 41, I believe, and they added the in-house caliber that they've been using, but they kept the starting price sub 3K. Of course, this launch wasn't without controversy either. I too would love to see a 36mm version, so we'll just have to wait to see what Tudor has up their sleeves for 2023. But the Ranger wasn't Tudor's last big launch of the year. In fact, neither the Black Bay Pro or the Ranger were on scale with their final big release, the Pelagos 39. The watch I never thought they'd make, a scaled down Pelagos. The perhaps true successor of the Snowflake sub, it's the more modern, technical of Tudor's divers. Or was, at least. In scaling it down, they also made it a bit less toolish. 500 meters became 200 meters, a matte ceramic bezel became brushed, a matte dial, subtly metallic. The result is a more consumer-friendly Pelagos. A titanium alternative to the Black Bay 58, a Tudor with vintage heritage, but no pastiche. Was it controversial? Of course, but it was also what a lot of people were waiting for. Will there be a date version, a model in blue? We're just gonna have to wait and see. I'm sorry, everyone. And what of Tudor's big sister, Rolex? No year in watches can go by without something big from Rolex. But this year was more odd than anything else, and included 3 big firsts from the historic Maison. At Watches and Wonders, Rolex launched a lefty GMT. Nicknamed the Sprite, though Destrolex was clearly a better option, Rolex mirrored their GMT Master 2, putting the crown on the left side. Oh, the horror. People acted like this was the most baffling thing in the world, but it's hardly a new concept, just new to Rolex, who are known for being conservative. Perhaps the enthusiast overreaction to a subtle change is why. More oddly though, they put the date and Cyclops on the left side as well. This does make the whole thing look a bit jarring. The bezel combined black and green ceramic, hence the soft beverage nickname reference. Sigh. Look, I'm not a Rolex guy, particularly modern Rolex, but I kind of like this one. It's weird, it's awkward, it's different. Eventually, you won't be able to get one, and then everyone will realize this was actually a hidden treasure. Okay, it's a Rolex, you already can't get one, but you know what I mean. But this wasn't Rolex's only unconventional watch that most people won't like that they launched this year. They launched the new Deep Sea Challenge. A production watch capable of 11,000 meters of water resistance. It's a 50mm uncrushable wrist can, but it was also made of light and lovely titanium. This is the first time Rolex used my favorite metal on a production watch. Rolex moves like a mountain, so these little things are a big deal. But once again, not a watch most people will actually want to wear at 50mm. That said, I'm sure they'll be impossible to get, even if you just wish to use it as a desk clock. Then, just when you thought Rolex wouldn't do anything else, they launched a CPO program that's certified pre-owned for the non-acronym folks out there. For the first time in history, you can get a pre-owned Rolex that has been authenticated, not just in terms of originality, but also functionality, and guaranteed for 2 years by the Crown. This program rolled out to 25 Bucher stores worldwide. Of course, these watches are not a budget way to get into the brand. Rather, they seem to come at a premium, with some prices ranging from 20 to 40% over the typical secondhand prices. A gulf that will continue to grow as Rolex prices continue to come down a bit. I don't know. What do you guys want to see from Rolex next year? Clearly they aren't listening, however. Back to Omega, but with a side of Swatch. You can't talk about 2022 without talking about the Moonswatch. You just can't. I tried. A rare moment when the watch industry broke through its normal confines and into popular culture at large. Probably the only time I can remember that really happening, other than maybe when Paul Newman's Paul Newman Daytona sold at auction for a crazy amount. But that was just awe-inspiring news because of its price and its relationship to a well-known and loved celebrity. This is the only time that a brand made a watch that seemingly the whole world wanted. On March 24th, Swatch and Omega revealed the Bioceramic Moonswatch, a 42mm Omega Speedmastered manufactured by the affordable juggernaut Swatch, rendered in a non-metallic composite material, available in 11 fun planet-inspired colorways with a quartz chronograph ticking inside. They were attached to a NASA-style Velcro strap and priced at a seemingly accessible to the masses $260. Yes, an Omega Speedmaster, which it says right on the dials with both logos to prove it, for just $260. A rare occasion when a luxury brand risked their stuffy status to make an icon accessible. It was honestly a beautiful moment and concept. But sadly, the story didn't end there. Unfortunately, supply didn't come close to demand, and launch day was a bit of a mess. Imagine that cutscene from the 1970s Willy Wonka film where the whole world goes crazy looking for those golden tickets. It ends in an auction. It's a fantastic scene. Go watch that movie. Long lines, fast sellouts, lots of people not getting watches. Swatch then announced they wouldn't be available online and only at Swatch boutiques, not even Swatch retailers, taking the access out of accessibility. While the Moonswatches seem easier to get now, one still has to walk into a store and ask, so not ideal. Will we see more of the Moonswatch in 2023? More colors, models, availability? No one knows, but I certainly hope so. But to end on a high note, or at least a literal note, while Omega teamed up with Swatch to make the most affordable Speedmaster in history, they also made the most expensive at retail, to my knowledge. If the $81,000 Canopus Gold model was too pedestrian for you, the Speedmaster Chrono Chime at $500,000 might be the watch you were waiting for. Part of a duo of watches with the same movement, inside is the new miraculous coaxial master chronometer caliber 1932, the most complicated movement Omega has ever made. A high-beat retroprint sonnerie that with the push of a button chimes the time that has elapsed from the running chronograph. The movement is also made largely of gold, because why not? The Speedmaster itself is 45 millimeters of gold as well, and aventurine enamel with Soundwave guilloche motifs decorating the subdials and chaptering. It looks insane. It is insane. It's ultra high-end watchmaking just for the sake of it. That's all the time we have for today. Come back next week for the second half of A Year in Watches 2022. You don't want to miss it. Until then, have a happy and safe new year. Don't forget to visit WarnerWound.com daily for news and reviews and everything else about watches. Please give us a like and subscribe if you have enjoyed A Week in Watches in 2022, and I'll see you in 2023. Thank you.